Vampires, the maleficent scourge that blights the land, bringing nothing but pain and suffering to the good people of Tamriel. These vile creatures stalk the night, finding innocents to sink their fangs into, satiating their lust for mortal blood. Vampires have inflicted Tamriel with its filth since before recorded history, but not all sit idly by, praying to the gods, hoping a vampire won't target them. There are some, like the Dawnguard, who stand ready in their mighty fortress, gathering members and acquiring the tools needed to purge the vampire menace from the lands. Hello and welcome back to Fudge Muppet. My name is Scott, and today we're looking at the Dawnguard, and what better place to start than the very origins of the Order. You see, the Dawnguard of the Fourth Era, the courageous vampire hunters ready to face down the Volkihar vampires, are actually a fairly recent organization, their namesake coming from the imposing Fort Dawnguard. Many centuries ago, in the early Second Era, before the Three Banners War, before the Plane Meld, before Tiber Septim would claim all Tamriel, Fort Dawnguard would be constructed in the Rift. At first glance, you may think it to be a military stronghold, perhaps built to defend against Dunmer invasions from the east, but you would be mistaken. Its true purpose is much more interesting. The Jarl of Riften at the time had a son, who was a keen adventurer. His many travels would unfortunately lead him into contact with a vampire, resulting in a battle that would have him contract the terrible affliction known as Sanguinare Vampiris. Much to the horror of his father, the disease would develop into fully formed vampirism. Not many fathers would be able to deliver the orders for execution of their own son, and the Jarl was no exception. However, the Jarl could not simply let his son loose on the world, allowing him to succumb to his lust for blood. Fort Dawnguard would be constructed not far from Riften at the Jarl's request, a castle built in the mountains, an impregnable fortress built as a prison for his own son. A large mercenary force was assembled by the Jarl to stand guard, keeping his son under lock and key. They would become known as the Dawnguard. This is the first mention in history of the Dawnguard as an actual group of people, but these Dawnguard weren't explicitly vampire hunters. If anything, they were more like wardens of vampires. But where did the change occur? What turned these glorified prison guards into fully fledged professional vampire hunters? As you can imagine, being a full-time guard wouldn't necessarily be the most stimulating of jobs. But when you spend all day watching a vampire day in, day out, you could expect to pick up a thing or two about their physiology and abilities. The Jarl's son may have grown in strength during his isolation, as many vampires often increase in power when starved of human blood. Perhaps fed up with his imprisonment, he sought an opportunity to make an escape, an effort that would prove fatal. He was slain by his jailers, much to the displeasure of the Jarl paying them, and no good deed goes unpunished. The guards were banished from the fort by the Jarl. While we do not know the intention of the action, the slaying of this vampire set the first Dawnguard down the path of the vampire hunter. They knew their enemy well and were uniquely equipped to tackle other vampires in the region. They carried out of Fort Dawnguard their new name and the crossbows that would eventually become their trademark weapon. Their time at Fort Dawnguard had instilled a new sense of purpose amongst the mercenaries. As they were already a mercenary force, their profession was violence for money. Whether for noble reasons or for the coin, these exiled Dawnguard continued to hunt vampires in the region for some time. Initially, they were well loved, but after a while, they fell out of favor with the populace. As they'd slain many of the vampires that preyed on the innocent, the threat of the vampires waned. When there were less vampires to kill, there was less money to be made, and it would seem they turned to other money-making activities. People lost respect for the Order after reports that told of them raiding small settlements, or even succumbing to the vampiric affliction themselves. By mostly removing the vampire threat, they had worked themselves out of a job, and according to certain rumors, they resorted to becoming the very monsters they once hunted, in an act of desperation. After their demise in the public consciousness, the fort and their name fell into disrepair. Over time, the Order had faded from memory, but there were others to fill their shoes, ones with a much broader target. Namely, the Vigilant of Stendarr was born from the spread of the Daedric horrors of the Oblivion Crisis. When monsters from the plains of Oblivion poured forth into Nirn, fear was rife amongst the common folk. The Vigil hunted any creatures of Daedric origin, including vampires and were-creatures. They founded chapters all across Tamriel to help establish their forces in the fight against all things Daedra. In Skyrim, they operated out of the Hall of the Vigilant, their local headquarters situated south of Dawnstar. But it would turn out they were not well equipped enough to deal with the oncoming vampire threat. The Volkihar are a particularly fearsome tribe of vampires led by Lord Harkon and his family. Once happy to live out in their remote home, they only bothered people when leaving to sate their bloodlust. Their boldness would increase as they attempted to fulfill an ancient prophecy that would block out the sun and to destroy the pious warriors risen as their main opposition in the region. The aggression of the vampires would spill over into all-out conflict in the 201st year of the Fourth Era. Vampires began savagely raiding major cities, feeding and fighting in a display of strength. The Volkihar wiped out almost all of Skyrim's Vigilance of Stendarr, leaving the Vigilance force in tatters and their headquarters burnt to the ground. The ancient Dawnguard order was reformed out of the ashes. Needed more than ever, a few noble warriors rose to meet the tide of darkness. Isran took up refuge in the decrepit fort of old and sought to kickstart a resistance to the vampires. He was once a member of the Vigilance of Stendarr, but had left the order prior to the Volkihar's attack as he saw them as weak and unprepared for real conflict. Little did they know, he was sadly all too correct. Originally mocked for his desire to rebuild Fort Dawnguard to its original glory, Isran's ranks grew quickly after the rise in vampire attacks. People flocked to the fort to raise crossbow and steel in opposition. This included former and surviving members of the Vigilant of Stendarr, like Salan, who came forward to join the newly formed vampire hunters. The Dawnguard worked to reinstate the fort as their headquarters, standing as a shining beacon in the battle against the Dark Knight, a comparison that would soon become a little too real for comfort. As I mentioned earlier, the Volkihar clan were poised to act on an ancient prophecy written in the First Era. An enraged snow elf named Vaitha wrote that the blood of Coldharbor's daughter will blind the eye of the dragon. In layman's terms, this means the spilt blood of one given vampirism directly through a ritual with Molag Bal could eternally block out the sun. A single arrow soaked in this blood and shot from the bow of Auriel into the sun would see Auriel's light extinguished. Vaitha concocted the prophecy as an act of revenge on Auriel for allowing him to be afflicted with vampirism. This betrayal cursed him to an eternity as a Daedric monster. If this prophecy was ever acted upon, the world would become a haven for vampires and all manner of Daedric creatures. Should you be interested in a deeper discussion of what would happen if Harkon had succeeded in his goals, check out our theory video linked in the description below. While Harkon plotted, the Dawnguard were actively investigating the rise in vampiric activity in the region. Through their efforts, they soon learned of Harkon's plans to carry out the prophecy. The discovery of Serana in Dim Hollow Crypt was a turning point in the campaign. She was the daughter of Coldharbor needed to complete Harkon's dark mission, sealed away by her mother in secret in order to keep her safe from the Volkihar's grasp. Her whole life was marked with the pain of the Daedric prince Molag Bal, from vampiric transformation to her slumber in a crypt. After she is awoken, Serana sees an opportunity to take her destiny into her own hands, aiding in stopping the prophecy which would cost her life. With her assistance, the bow of Auriel is found, guarded by the ancient snow elf, Vaitha, in the very chantry where he was first afflicted. With these tools, the Dawnguard were well equipped with all they needed to stop Harkon's dream of an eternal night. Much like the ending of the Skyrim Civil War, the future of the Dawnguard does not currently have a canon ending. It all depends on who the last Dragonborn sides with. While Lord Harkon is always slain and the prophecy unfulfilled, one major choice stands before the Dovahkiin. If they join the Volkihar, the Dawnguard are all slain. It's somewhat fitting that once again, despite doing the right thing, the Order are murdered and lost to history. Their sacrifice does cause the vampire attacks to cease at the scale they once did, returning balance to the province. While this does not end the immediate threat, personally, I see the opposite ending as more likely if we had to make a call on what we'd prefer to see. I say this because the future of the Dawnguard stabilizes the region in a more realistic way, keeping the vampires of the Reach at bay with their presence and patrols. After the loss of Lord Harkon, the Volkihar onslaught is driven back by the forces of the light. Serana may even break free of her traumatic past, free to seek out a cure and live free of her family's dark history. But let's say you were living in Skyrim and became a vampire hunter of Fort Dawnguard. What would you gain from joining their ranks? First and foremost, unparalleled access to the impressive Fort Dawnguard and its arsenal. We'd imagine new recruits would get their hands on a shiny new crossbow, the trademark weapon of the vampire hunting force. With this weapon, remaining safe from the bite or claw of an enemy vampire is easy, but there are plenty of options if melee is more your thing. Gunmar the Blacksmith offers members of the Dawnguard rune axes and hammers imbued with the power of the sun to deal unique damage to vampiric foes. They'd also likely score some armor, with both the light and heavy armors adorned with the Dawnguard insignia and enchanted to resist vampiric attacks. These enchantments are unique to the two sets of Dawnguard gear, so this alone is a big perk for those hungry to get their Van Helsing on. Initiates who are skilled in magic can also visit Florentius Banius, an Imperial priest recruited into the Dawnguard. He offers unique magic tomes due to his divine connection with Arkay, one of the Aedra, whose power is often invoked in opposition to the undead. The first tome he offers is Stendarr's Aura, which lights up an area and pulses harm to the undead. Next is Vampire's Bane, an explosion of sunlight that deals heavy damage to any vampires unlucky enough to be in its radius. Lastly, you can find a tome for Sunfire, allowing you to hurl a bolt of light at foes that deal damage only to the undead. These blessings of the Aedra are perfectly suited for conflict with the vampires, so it's no wonder this order prevails where others fall victim to the Daedric plight. The Dawnguard's unique armor, weapons and magics are all perfectly suited to their cause, hunting the vampires of Tamriel. They also have some more creative weaponry to make use of during their hunts. Armored animals like huskies can be found guarding the keep, but the Dawnguard most notably utilize armored trolls in their fight against the vampires. As a member, you'd be able to enlist the help of these beasts trained and armored by Gunmar. When it comes to the question of why one would want an armored troll in their service, Gunmar has a simple answer. Serene asks him how he came up with the idea of outfitting the already fearsome creatures with the armor plating. "I guess it came from fighting them," replies Gunmar, thinking, what could be worse, and then realizing a troll with armor is even more intimidating. It's likely that even vampires would feel this way about armored trolls, especially when confronted with a patrol of Dawnguard warriors in tow. It's this determination that makes the Order so fierce. After their origins as a mercenary jailer force, they learned the ins and outs of vampires while protecting an inflicted son of a Jarl. Despite the Order's fall from grace, the Dawnguard we see in the Fourth Era is arguably more powerful than ever before, imbued with a desire for justice after the destruction of Skyrim's chapter of the Vigilant of Stendarr. Their influence in the realm as protectors of the populace and hunters of evil earns them a well-deserved spot in Tamriel's history books. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Dawnguard Explained, a long-standing order of vampire hunters and the bane of any vampire's existence. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, and do head down into the comments below and let us know what lore topics you would love to see covered in the future. Subscribe for more awesome Elder Scrolls content. My name is Scott from Fudge Muppet, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again next time.